Okay, Joe, we are live, my friend.
Okay, we are in now the start of episode 20 of Ishikawa SummitToSea, and we have another guest.
Another British guest. What a shocker.
Well, you know, quality is the buzzword, I think, when it comes to guests, and with the exception of, I don't know where I'm going with this, because I really like our American guests too, and any guests from anywhere in the world are welcome. But this guy is British, which is the best, obviously. And so we would like to welcome Phillip Jackson. Hello, Phillip.
Hello, Joe. Hello, Casey.
Hello, Phillip. Welcome from Kyoto, right?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Congratulations on your newly declared state of emergency.
Whatever that will do. Who knows?
Yeah. So Phillip is going to talk to us about paranormal things.
I think that was obvious from my ghostly introduction.
Okay. Phillip, please tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, no problem. So I first came to Japan in, I think it was 97, early 98, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I came to live here in 2003, went back to the UK in early 2007, and then came back to Japan in 2012. And I haven't been back to the UK since. So I'm settled
Not
here
even
now.
for a visit?
Sorry?
Not even been back for a visit since 2012.
Not even back for a visit. No.
Wow.
So
no, I don't know much about your area. You're from Scunthorpe, is that right?
That's right, Scunthorpe. Yes.
Is that an explanation as to why you haven't been back, or?
I have to say, I left Scunthorpe about 24 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So I left Scunthorpe in about early 90s, maybe about 1995, something like that.
Okay.
Moved down to London. Was living and working in London, playing music in bands in London. I was in a band called the Bad Lizard Club, which you can find one of our gigs on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and search for the Bad Lizard Club, you'll get a 30-minute gig in there from about 1998, I think it was. We actually, I don't know if you recall the band. There's a Japanese band called the Michelle Elephant. You heard of them?
I have not.
No.
Sadly, the guitar player passed away a few years ago, and I think one of the members started a new band called The Birthday. But they were pretty big in Japan in the 90s, and they came over to the UK to play some shows. And we were booked to play a gig in North London, this small pub. And they said, we've got a Japanese band. They're recording in a studio down the road. Can you, but they've got no gear. Can you lend them your gear? And I said, yeah, no problem. So they turned up, and it was this Japanese band, the Michelle Elephant, and it turned out they were pretty big at the time in Japan. But yeah, I was then backwards and forwards because my wife is Japanese, so I was backwards and forwards to Japan, and then lived here 2003 to 2007, and then went back to the UK for about 6 years, and then came back in 2012.
So was it the music that brought you to Japan? Did you come here to as a musician, or what was your kind of capacity to originally come to Japan?
No, I mean, actually, when we came in 2003, we came over just to spend some time in Japan, really. We didn't know how long we was going to stay. And then after about 3.5 years, I've got 2 children. They're age 16 and 10. And my son at the time, we decided to come back to the UK for him to have some time in the UK, a bit of schooling. And then when we was thinking a few years down the line, where we was going to put our kind of final roots down, whether Japan or the UK, we opted for Japan, and that's where we've been since 2012.
I see. Wow. So when you came to Japan, were you already interested in the paranormal and that kind of phenomena, or was that something which was?
Actually, ever since a kid, my brother and I were only a couple of years difference in age, and so we were very close as children. And one of my earliest memories of one of the books we had was I think it was the Usborne book of ghosts, spectres, and hauntings, and we were really into that. Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, anything, Bigfoot, UFOs, anything like that. As kids, we were interested. Although my hometown Scunthorpe, I actually grew up in a village called Gunness, which is just outside, and it's a kind of farming community. So we convinced ourselves that some of the local farm buildings were haunted.
Right.
I'd always been interested. As I got older, my brother carried it on a little bit further, and when I moved away from the town, he set up a UFO group called Hangar 18 in the town, which was just local people would come along, and they got a few guest speakers, some quite well-known speakers that would come along, but it was just sort of like a club thing, and but he followed it more than I did. But with myself, with the paranormal things, I was more interested in history. So the things I've written about more is history, the books, Hidden Paths, Walking Historical Kyoto. And it's more from doing that I found that some of the locations had, ghost stories attached to them, or folklore, or, some kind of paranormal story connected to them. And I did the latest project, Paranormal Kansai. That was just because there were so many stories, and I thought this would be, quite a good idea to put them into one actual book itself. And obviously, it would be a small book it could be a big book if I just focused on Kyoto, but it would get a bit boring because in Kyoto it's folklore. There isn't a lot of variety to it, really. Yeah. So spreading it out to Kansai, it brings a lot more variety to the stories that were out there.
What for our listeners, like, what does paranormal mean? I think people might just think it's like ghosts or haunted houses or something, but what to you? What does that word mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. If somebody says paranormal, they think a ghost, and that's it. But if you look it up in the dictionaries, it says things that occur, experiences that occur that can't be explained by science or reason. So when I was doing the Paranormal Kansai, I was thinking, okay, you've got ghosts, you've got folklore tales which have got elements of cryptozoology. You've got UFO encounters.
Would Donald Trump fall into that category, or?
I think it quite possibly would. Yes, I mean it is quite difficult to explain some of the things he comes out with by science or reason. Well, certainly by science when you talk about
reason.
Infrared lights and injecting bleach. But
so it's a much broader envelope than just ghosts. It's
it is quite a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Well, what we're looking forward to most, Philip, is hearing some of your stories. You mentioned that you're working on a book now called Paranormal Kansai, right?
Yeah.
And you have another book called Hidden Paths. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I started those a couple of years ago, and that's just it's walking routes around Kyoto,
Mm-hmm.
but it's routes that basically the tourists don't generally go to.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody comes to Kyoto, and I don't know. I mean, you're not too far away through Fukui and then Kyoto, so I'm sure you've served your time in this area at some point. and the places that people go is the Ginkakuji, the Inari,
Kiyomizudera.
Fushimi Inari, Byodo-in, all those places which all the tourists flock to. And there's a couple of reasons why I don't particularly enjoy going to those places. One is, the last 12 months aside, they're usually packed. And it's kind of catering for the tourists. It's all the paths are nicely groomed, and there's usually gift shops and things like that, and everything's laid out for the tourists. So it's there's that sense of adventure sort of being taken away. Although if you go to Fushimi Inari, where the torii gates go up the mountain, most of the tourists give up halfway.
Yeah.
So
I must say that's my abiding memory from my previous visits to Japan before I lived here. Was actually as I was leaving. I went there by accident. I had an entire day to kill while they closed my Vodafone account, right. I'd never heard of it. I just got on the train. Someone said, "Oh, there's this place." Got off, on the train to Nara. Got off. Had no idea what it was. Walked up. It remains one of the most amazing places I've been to in Japan, but there was nobody there. I think for that reason, it's pretty steep, isn't it? Once you get on your way up,
I mean, if you do go right to the top, there's then paths that take you over to different areas. You can find different routes. There's one route from there which will take you to Momoyama Castle, which, quite funnily, one of the first times I went to Momoyama Castle, it's actually a replica, which was built in the 50s. And next to it, there's now a baseball field, but there used to be an amusement park next to it, which was called Castle Land, which, again, going back to YouTube, if you Google Castle Land Fushimi Castle, there's some old videos from the 80s TV commercials, which they're quite funny actually. But one of the first times I went there, I was looking up at the castle, and this old guy, Oji-san, just kind of looks at me and says, "It used to be 50 meters over there." So where the castle is now, it's not in the same location where it was, but they couldn't put it in the same location because where the castle originally was is now the tomb of the Meiji Emperor. So the castle came down, they built his tomb on there, years and years later, and then in the 1950s they decided to rebuild the castle as a kind of tourist attraction. It used to have a restaurant at the top, but it's now unsafe building, so it's closed up. But obviously when they rebuilt it, they found, where it was, we've buried the emperor. So we can't put it there.
Change of plans.
So that's now that's the car park.
Yeah, there is quite a big car park there, actually.
Well, that's what we do in England, isn't it? We just build car parks over our buried kings.
Yeah. Wasn't there? Didn't they find the skeleton of Richard III in a pub car park a few years ago?
Yeah, that was in Leicester, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, that was my witty. That's right. Yeah, King Richard. Yeah, III.
Well, let's get into some paranormal stories, Philip. You, I think, let's hear one from your book, Paranormal Kansai, one of your faves from there, and then you did tell us that you have a few Ishikawa paranormal stories, which we're looking forward to.
I took out a couple from your area.
Nice.
Whether you'll know them or not.
It's turning the tables on us.
Yeah, I like it.
But the one I picked out from the Paranormal Kansai book is it's one that part of it has been in the Hidden Paths books. But the reason I chose it is that since writing it in the Hidden Paths books, I found out more about that story, and found that there's actually possibly two sightings of the same ghost, or two ghosts of the same person at two different locations in Kyoto, which is, quite unusual. So, and also the NHK Tiger drama this year, which is overlapping into this year, is Akechi Mitsuhide. So this is the ghost of Akechi Mitsuhide. So if anybody's been watching the Tiger drama, I'm going to give away basically what happens in the end.
Spoiler alert.
So if you're watching a Tiger drama and you haven't read the history and you don't know what happens, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to it basically, and bring it up to the present day. But in 1582, it was Oda Nobunaga. He wasn't the shogun; he was de facto shogun at that point, and Akechi Mitsuhide was one of his generals, along with Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And at the time, Toyotomi Hideyoshi was involved in a siege with the Mori clan over near Hiroshima area, I think it was. And Akechi Mitsuhide, his mother had been killed. And basically, Oda Nobunaga had made a treaty with one of his enemies. He'd gone back on it. And as a result of that, they'd killed Akechi Mitsuhide's mother, to make a long story short. And that, plus some other grievances, there are stories that Nobunaga had, humiliated Mitsuhide. He decided he'd had enough of him. So Oda Nobunaga was staying at Honnoji in Kyoto. The original Honnoji was burnt down. Basically what happened was Akechi Mitsuhide, he was instructed by Oda Nobunaga to go help Toyotomi Hideyoshi against the Mori clan. But what he did was, instead of doing that, he told his soldiers, his forces, the enemy is at Honnoji. So he took his forces over to Kyoto, to Honnoji, and surrounded.
What is Honnoji?
That's a temple in Kyoto, near Horikawa area, sort of west side of the city. Okay. And he surrounded that. He set it on fire. Nobunaga wasn't expecting an attack, so he had no soldiers with him. He had no defenses. He was surrounded. The temple was on fire. And so he basically killed himself because he knew he had no way out. His son escaped. They caught his son. They killed his son. And after that incident, Akechi Mitsuhide, he declared himself the shogun. Now, if you come looking for Honnoji now in Kyoto, you will find it in one of the shopping streets nearer the river Kamagawa, because it was rebuilt, but it was rebuilt in a different location. They still have a sign outside the new one saying this is the temple where Nobunaga was killed, but it's actually not the same location. So basically, after he was killed, Mitsuhide sent a message to the Mori clan, who was in a siege with Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Mitsuhide took his forces to Yamazaki area, which is sort of on the border of Osaka and Kyoto. But the message going to the Mori clan was intercepted by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, so he knew what had happened. So he brokered a treaty with the Mori clan. Mitsuhide was hoping that the Mori clan was going to side with him, but they never got that message. So Toyotomi brokered a deal with the Mori, headed off to battle Akechi Mitsuhide in Yamazaki. He defeated Akechi Mitsuhide in Yamazaki area, and Mitsuhide then ran away basically heading towards Kyoto. So he went through Kyoto, and he got ambushed, basically just down the road from where I am now. It's a place called Ogorisu. I'm in Kohata area of Kyoto, of close to Uji. It's Uji city, but it's Kohata, and yeah, it's just about 20 minutes down the road from here. A place called Ogorisu, and there's an area called Akechi Yabu, which is a grove of bamboo, and in this area, there was a bandit, Nakamura Chobe, who some stories say that he was aligned to Nobunaga, and he'd actually been put as an ambush there to catch Mitsuhide. So as Mitsuhide and his small entourage came through that area, they came out of the bamboo woods and attacked, and Mitsuhide got pierced by a bamboo spear from Nakamura Chobe, and all his innards spilled out onto the ground. And there's actually a wooden post and a sign in the ground there now showing where that incident actually happened. And it says where his
cartoon intestines.
Yeah. I've been out there a couple of times to have a look. There's a wooden post and a picture explaining what happened, and it says that on this particular ground where his blood and guts landed, the bamboo doesn't grow. And I'm
tainted.
sure you'll attest to how easily bamboo grows.
Right.
Yeah. And on that spot where they put the post, there is actually no bamboo growing. There is an area of just soil, and then the rest of it is all bamboo. But the story that goes with that area now is that if you go there on a stormy night after midnight, and in between the wind and the rain and the sounds of the storm, you'll hear the screams of the samurai as they're being cut down from their horses and pierced with bamboo spears. I have not been on a stormy night. I've been in a clear sunlight afternoon.
And they were just sighing gently.
Maybe eventually I'll get out there on a stormy night. But yeah, there are many reports apparently that people who say they have heard the screams of Akechi Mitsuhide and his soldiers being killed there, screaming in the bamboo forest. Now, this is where it goes on to the story of what actually happened to Mitsuhide. One story says that obviously he was killed on the spot, and as was tradition then, enemies would take the head of their enemy, in some cases twisting the head off apparently, and some of Mitsuhide's followers who who didn't want that to happen to their general, their leader, they took his head themselves and quickly left the area, carried the head and went off to an area of Kyoto called Higashiyama, and buried the head there. And there is a small shrine in that area now where you can go to, and there is a sign up saying this is where the head of Akechi Mitsuhide was buried. So his head was apparently buried there. There is a story.
Check, do any heads grow there?
I went there, and I didn't have any paranormal experiences, and I haven't read of any experiences of that particular area.
So there's no heads grow there either.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, go on.
Planted it, but nothing sprouted from there.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, go on.
There is one story that actually it was one of his retainers who got killed, and he escaped and then lived his life as a monk. But that's that story. Whether it's because it's not really that interesting, there's not really much to find on that. Now, what's the other location is there's a tunnel called Kazan Tunnel in Kyoto, in an area called Awataguchi. And there used to be a wall around Kyoto, and it had what was called 9 mouths, kind of roads that came into it. And Gucci, Kuchi, Mouth. So any area in Kyoto that's got Gucci on it, like there's areas Tambaguchi, and this particular area is called Awataguchi. It means one of the mouths of Kyoto. And around that area there was, from the Tokugawa era, it was an execution site. But it was also burial grounds, and there's still cemeteries there now. And one of Mitsuhide's retainers took the body of Mitsuhide. So the head went one way, and the body was taken to Awataguchi and buried there. Now there's reports of a samurai ghost being seen at Kazan Tunnel. Kazan Tunnel is it's still in operation. It's a bicycle and foot tunnel. They built a new roadway tunnel next to it quite a few years back, and there is another ghost that goes there as well, which is more of a more contemporary story.
Can't move for ghosts in that.
Yeah, but I'll add that on at the end because it's not actually connected to Mitsuhide. So you've got the ghost you've got the sounds of the ghost in Ogorisu, of the actual battle from 400 or so years ago. And in Awataguchi Kazan Tunnel, you've got this samurai spirit that's been seen. Now, it was an execution site. The retainer who took the body there was also captured, and he was executed. He was executed by the river. By the river, there was an execution site, and then he was buried at the same place. And there are cemeteries. And so the question is it Mitsuhide's ghost? Is it the ghost of the retainer who was executed not far away and buried there? Or is it the ghost of one of many that was executed in that ground? So the connection to Mitsuhide is just that apparently his body was buried there as well. But the more contemporary, the newer ghost story to that area is not so many years ago. I think it was in the 90s. There was a motorcycle accident. I think a scooter, a moped, and a young guy was killed in the accident. And there has been reports of a headless moped rider being seen going through the tunnel. So there's a couple of ghosts of that area.
Wow,
that's a long, complicated story. I'm going to need to listen back again, pay more attention, follow it. But
can I ask a question about burial, sort of execution sites? I'm just interested in that because it seems like those are often like haunted areas or sort of cursed areas. I'm thinking specifically of, now Casey's going to hate this, I'm thinking specifically of Newcastle United, my football club, which one end of the ground is called the Gallowgate.
Right.
And it's where the gallows were, where people were hung. So before there was a football stadium, that's where all the executions took place. And Newcastle has had rotten luck for like decades and decades. And a previous manager, Ruud Gullit, thought that it was because the stadium is cursed. Is that? What do you think about that? Are execution grounds and places where people have been sort of?
I mean, definitely in Japan, whenever you read anything about an execution ground, there's always a sense of superstition to it. I must say that we're going back to Newcastle United. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Newcastle United.
Good man.
The Scunthorpe connection, Kevin Keegan.
Yeah.
Keegan was,
Case is glazed over now.
Joe's just fishing for a compliment for his hat that he's wearing. So just give him that, Phillip, and we can move on.
That's Northumberland. That's different.
Kevin Keegan was a Scunthorpe United legend, and he left and went to Liverpool, and among other clubs, he ended up at Newcastle United, and then had 2 stints as the manager of Newcastle United. But I must say, one of I don't get many highs with being a supporter of Scunthorpe United. We're in the lowest division at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Relegation battle this year.
Does that make you feel good, Joe?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But we did scrape our way into what's called the Championship, which is the the second tier, and Newcastle were in that division at the time, and they came to Scunthorpe United, and we beat them 2-1.
Don't remember that. I remember winning that division twice.
We lost the return. We lost the return match.
Sorry, Casey, to derail.
That's okay.
But that's going to execution grounds, you do find, especially in Japan, whenever there's a mention of an execution ground, there are stories of paranormality.
Yeah, it's either that or monk burial grounds, I find. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there is a lot of superstition in Japan when it comes to, if you think about folklore and things like that. It's it's a very there's a lot of things attached to you might be walking down the street and there's a small shrine, the small ones that you get in the street. Mm-hmm. Somebody will stop. You could be behind someone and you see them stop and say a quick prayer, and you might find that person 100 yards down the road. They stop at another one and do another quick prayer and things like that.
You know how in Japan, if somebody dies in a house, or especially if they commit suicide in a house, like nobody wants to buy that property?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a law relating to it. If you are selling or renting,
right,
and you're dead,
yeah,
you have to tell them.
Well, the law is that the first time after the death, you have to tell the next occupant that somebody died there. After that, the next person doesn't have to say anything. But there's a website which has got all the locations, and I can't remember the name of the website, but I've looked on it a couple of times, just checking my own house, and it tells you if somebody had passed away there, and it tells you basically what happened. Mm-hmm. Whether it was an accident, a suicide, or murder in some cases. Yeah. But there's I came across this because it appeared in UK newspaper The Guardian a couple of years ago, and I think this guy was in Osaka. He was a Japanese comedian, not a particularly well-known one, but just an amateur comedian. But he based his whole routine on experiences he had in renting these apartments, mansions. He would specifically go looking to live in places that were on these, not really blacklisted, but, and he'd rent one for a few months, do a comedy routine about his experiences there, and then go on to another one and go on to another one.
Do you think that aversion to living in houses where death has occurred is a paranormal spiritual thing, or just like they just don't want to live in a place like it? Yeah, it's creepy. Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I mean, there are some people who can walk into a house and they'll say, I can feel something here. There's a presence.
Yeah.
And
they might died in this room.
There's a pretty high chance that most places, at some point in history,
yeah,
if you go back far enough, someone's died there.
Yeah, I mean, where I live, whether anybody who's listening has heard of it, but around the area here is called the Uji-ryo, which are the ancient graves of the Fujiwara family, which go back hundreds of years. And basically, what the Fujiwara, many of they were a very influential family in, basic, almost controlled the imperial family up to at least the 11th century, and they were involved with the imperial family up until almost modern times, really. And there's a lot of graves around this area. It's said that most of them are female members of the Fujiwara family because they were the wives of the emperors, and they supplied the next emperors. So, they were held in very high regard. And if I look out my back window, just about 30 yards from where I'm sitting now, I look out the window and I look down at one of those graves. It's a big woodland area. And I look down from the window and there's a stone post with engraving on, explaining, yes, one of the Fujiwara is here.
Wow. Right across the street from my house. Joe, you've been here, and there's like it's an old kofun, like the burial mound. And it's got like, now it's all covered in trees, but there are like some walking paths around it. And at the top, it's not that tall, but at the top, the whole top area is like roped off, so you can't go in there.
Yeah.
And there are wooden posts like throughout where I guess that's where people were buried at some point.
There's one in Takatsuki in Osaka. And as far as I know, it's the only one in Japan that you can actually walk onto the top. And yeah, it's like that. I've been to the top of it a couple of times, and it's just woodland on top. And they build a museum next to it. It almost disappeared. And due to archaeological work, they basically found the what's the word? They worked out exactly where it was placed, and I wouldn't say they rebuilt it, but it was disappearing, and they put the moat in again. But they actually have a festival there in August. They go and have picnics and things, around the burial mound.
This will cease to be a thing, won't it, at some point in the future? Because in Japan now, everybody's cremated. Am I right in saying that? So, burial mounds and things. We're looking back at people who died hundreds or a few hundred years ago.
Yeah,
I don't think these were like normal folk.
No.
But it's got a burial mound.
But how many time are those something which, in recent history, in the last 100 years, are still being created or not?
I mean, the Kofun tombs, they're going back hundreds of years. The one in Takatsuki, they're not, they've got an idea, but they're not 100% sure exactly who was buried there.
Yeah.
It's that particular. I mean, some of them obviously they've got records for, but a lot of them, it's going back hundreds of years. Like the Fujiwara graves, which are around where I live, there's 38 of them, and they don't know who's in them. They've got ideas about some of them, and if you look them up, it will say, we think that it's possibly, Fujiwara no Mitsunaga or whatever in this one, or in that one it could be this from this era. But they don't really know exactly.
I suppose that's why it's important that people like yourself are writing books to document these things and keep awareness sort of perpetuating as the kind of they'll be forgotten otherwise in time, I guess.
Well, there's a place not too far from Fushimi Inari, and it's called Mount Oiwa, and it takes about 30 to 45 minutes from the bottom to the top of the mountain, and halfway up there's a shrine, but it's abandoned from about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, maybe not quite as long as that, but not it's not an ancient shrine, and it actually now looks like something out of an Indiana Jones movie because people don't go there. The paths are looked after a little bit, but it's very overgrown. And last January I took a trek up there.
You got caught in a booby trap, did you?
And you can see how easily something will disappear. There was typhoon damage; it hadn't been repaired, but there was a couple of stone torii gates which were donated by a Japanese artist in the 50s. And actually, if anybody looks at the cover of Hidden Paths Volume 4, it's on the front cover of that.
Okay.
And the name of the artist escapes me at the moment, but there's a museum in Kyoto which sometimes displays some of his work. But he donated one stone torii gate when he was praying for the health of his mother, because I think the shrine was dedicated to healthy legs, I think, or something like that, or an internal organs. I can't remember exactly what her issues was. And then she survived for about another 15 years, and then he donated another stone torii gate about sometime after her death as a thank you for her surviving a few years longer. But the rest of the shrine is just collapsing. It's falling down, and I say it looks like something out of an Indiana Jones movie.
All right. We are going long here. We're already 42 minutes into this. Can you give us like a quick 5-minute Ishikawa paranormal story?
Okay. Well, I've got
the very, very abridged version.
I've got two, so they will be short because obviously it's out of my Kansai zone. I found these especially for this, but let's see. So there's I'll tell you what both of them are, and you can pick which one you want in case we don't have time for both. So one of them is the Miyajima Kudo Tunnel, which is also known as the Ushikubi Tunnel. And the other one is Nodayama Cemetery, which is the Maida clan tomb.
Oh, either of those strike your fancy, Joe?
I want to go Maida clan.
Yeah,
I've heard of them.
Yeah,
yeah. Let's go for that one then.
Well, the Maida clan were from the 1500s right up to the Meiji Restoration of 1868, and basically there's a hilly area in the southwest part of Kanazawa City, and it's called Nodayama. Have you heard of that area?
I have not. Have you, Joe?
Yeah, loads of times. Yeah, I've always heard of it. No, I haven't.
Well, on that hilly area, there are about 50,000 graves, including the tombs of the Maida clan.
Oh.
And the graveyard basically began in about 1587. And that was when the brother of Toshie Maida, who was the head of the clan, his brother died. And so they buried him there. And before Toshie Maida died, he left instructions that he wanted his tomb in the same place. And so basically he was buried there. You've got two of the Maida clan there. And after that, it basically became the Maida clan graveyard, and retainers were buried on the lower levels of the hill. Now, just a little bit of background on Toshie Maeda. He actually was involved with the Akechi Mitsuhide story.
Okay.
Because he fought at the Battle of Yamazaki, which involved the defeat of Akechi Mitsuhide. But afterwards, he went on to become one of the generals of Toyotomi Hideyoshi after Hideyoshi basically took control once all the situation with finding a successor to Oda Nobunaga. So basically, in the graveyard, there's been spirits, ghosts of samurai warriors have been seen. There's also been a ghost of a woman in a white kimono has been seen in the graveyard. Now, what's a bit strange is that some people claim that after they've been there, on their cars, they found hand marks and scratches which they say have been made by samurai swords katana blades.
Try explaining that one to the insurance company.
When we go check this place out, Joe, we're taking your car.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't care.
And before you decide to go and check it out, a couple more things. People have heard footsteps and then looked around and there's nobody there. But people have said that if you go there and you cause trouble, go there to play pranks, make a noise, disrupt the calmness, you will have an accident on your way home in your car.
Oh.
I'm prepared to give that a go.
I'm prepared to go with you, Joe.
Okay.
To be fair, having a car accident in Kanazawa, the odds are pretty high, given the way people drive around here. So,
well, thanks. You've delved deep into our area there.
Yeah.
Shall we return the favor?
Yeah, let's go for it.
In your area.
Okay, Joe, you were tasked with going into Philip's area. Only one of us will be invading your area today, Philip. So you're getting off easy.
Yeah.
And Joe, I have no idea what you've come up with. So,
well, you're going to hate this, Casey, but perhaps Philip will enjoy it. I'm just going to take take a slight detour from the paranormal for a few minutes, and then we'll get back to it. Okay. But I thought this is now you mentioned that you haven't been back to Scunthorpe for quite a long time, so. I've actually got a story, because all of the stories in the Grimsby Live on the Grimsby Telegraph website were COVID. It's wall to wall COVID, as we're finding every week. So I went deep and I found the sort of nostalgia pages. So this is a story from 1981.
Just if I could interrupt and add something, you mentioned Grimsby. Because Grimsby is the next town.
Yeah.
But back in my sort of early 20s, when I was playing music over there, we used to play the whole area. And I was once threatened by a promoter in Grimsby. He was from London. And he said to me and the rest of the band, "You boys will never play Grimsby again."
Oh.
Was that a promise or a threat?
Well, we did play again.
Well, here's the title now. I'm expecting a glimmer of recognition from you, Philip, and I'm guessing that this is just going to confuse Casey. And here's the headline from 1981, when Lord Ian Beefy Botham ended up before Scunthorpe magistrates accused of assaulting sailor. Does this ring any bells?
I did go and used to watch Botham when he played at Scunthorpe United.
Well, there you go. So this is a cricketing legend, Casey. Cricket legend.
Oh, okay.
Called Ian Botham, whose son played rugby for Newcastle. But anyway, he did actually. Yeah, he played for Scunthorpe United football team, and he landed himself in hot water after an alleged assault outside Tiffany's nightclub in 1981. You ever played at Tiffany's?
My older brother used to frequent Tiffany's.
Well, there you go. All these links. I just think it's such an odd story. England cricketing hero. Casey, this guy is an absolute cricketing legend. He's an all-rounder, probably one of the best cricket players that England's ever produced.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
He's also the former Scunthorpe United vice president. And this.
So he was a cricketer, but he was the vice president of the football team.
He has been since he was a cricketer, I think.
He's still alive.
Well, he's still alive. Yes, yeah, he's very much alive.
I don't know why I was thinking it's 1981. I was thinking this was like 75 years ago or something.
He's such a legend that he's been made a lord. So he's now a peer of the realm. Which means that he gets to go into the House of Lords, which is one of the sort of governing parliamentary. It's not parliamentary, but it's one of the decision-making houses in London. So that if you're made a lord, you're given the sort of opportunity to join in with all that crap. So anyway, so what happened was he played 11 games as a centre half for Scunthorpe United between 1979 and 1984, and he was part of the social
Is this
group.
relevant to the news story here?
It
You're
is.
just giving me
It
his
is.
general biography.
It is because in December 1980, during an FA Cup second round replay between Altrincham and Scunthorpe, the goalkeeper's knee, that's Joe Neenan, it collided with the groin of Altrincham captain John King during the last minute of the game. His knee collided with his John. And this resulted in a disputed penalty that non-league Altrincham scored, and that took them through to the next round against Liverpool. So Scunthorpe missed the chance to play Liverpool at Anfield because of this goalkeeper's inadvertent foul. And then they had their Christmas party at Tiffany's nightclub on December 23rd, and it was marred by an incident in the gents' toilet involving a gang of youths who goaded Neenan about the incident. All right, so the goalkeeper, he was goaded. And apparently some of the locals weren't pleased to see the players out celebrating just after they'd been knocked out of the FA Cup by a non-league club. Words were exchanged in the corridor and then later outside. And according to Lord Botham in his autobiography, they continued to bait him. And then they chased him. So Ian Botham and this guy, Neenan, chased these guys down the street and cornered them in an alley and punched them in the face. And this guy was a 19-year-old Royal Navy apprentice who went to the police and to the newspapers, and they were both charged with assault, had to pay £100 costs. But I just thought that was quite an interesting story, that this guy was a cricketing legend went and beat up a young sailor.
I seem to remember, actually, the goalkeeper, Joe Neenan, I think he was ginger-haired guy, but that's not what I seem to remember. I seem to remember that a friend of my auntie actually dated him for a while.
Wow.
It's time for the quiz, it's quiz time.
I've prepared a brief quiz, Philip, to test your knowledge of cryptid creatures.
Okay.
Joe, you had to look up cryptid on the internet today. What is a cryptid creature for us?
I was joking about looking it up. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Is this something like Bigfoot?
Yeah.
Is this your Yeti? Yeah. Your Loch Ness monster?
I think you mentioned cryptozoology earlier, Philip. So, these are, by the way, these are British cryptids, and I was happy to hear you say that you became interested in the paranormal as a young child, because maybe you will know some of these. I will give you a description of the cryptid creature. Joe, you can play along too. And please tell me if you know, what is this cryptid creature? Are you ready?
Yes.
Ready.
Okay. A large humanoid entity. It lives in Cornwall, England, and has been sighted several times. The first sighting took place in 1976 in the village of Monin. It is sometimes seen as the English counterpart of the Mothman due to similarities in appearance. Do either of you have any idea what this is?
Is this the something about the? Is this No, it's not Dartmoor, is it? The Moor monster? No.
Nope.
No.
I've heard of Mothman, but I haven't heard of the English version.
Okay, well, this is his distant cousin, Owlman.
Owlman.
Yes.
Actually, now you mention it, I have heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. Joe, have you ever heard of Owlman?
I haven't heard of Owlman. No. Was he bitten by a radioactive owl?
I don't know. I don't have that information. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is another humanoid. It is 2 meters tall, with a massive body covered in hair, except the top of its head.
Okay, it sounds like you're taking the piss now, Casey.
You're right. I'm talking about Joe.
Well, was that really me that you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the rest of it?
2 words, Casey. Fuck off.
Lurks around pubs and pastry shops, terrifies small children, but is actually quite gentle.
That's right. That is true.
Okay. All right. Next one. An unknown creature said to roam in East Anglia. One of the many ghostly black dogs recorded across the British Isles, sometimes recorded as an omen of death, sometimes a more companionable animal. The famous sighting in Bungay, and Blythburgh is a particularly famous account of the beast, and images of black sinister dogs have become part of the iconography of the area.
I don't know. Usually when those stories come up, they just call them a black dog or something, don't they? Or a big cat.
Black is in one of the several names I have for it.
Black Betty.
No.
Bambalam.
I have black.
Bambalam was the name of the town that Casey mentioned, I think.
Black Shuck. Old Shuck. Old Shock. Or simply Shuck.
Okay.
Never heard of any of those?
Nope.
The Led Zeppelin song Black Dog. The song was called Black Dog because during the recording, this black dog used to just wander in and out of the recording studio.
Ooh, I'm just thinking of the movie The Omen, where there's that black dog, that sort of Rottweiler-looking dog that shows up and just says, "Yeah, why don't you go and kill that guy?"
All right, let's try another here. Known to stalk the people who climb this is a hint, the second highest peak in Scotland. Because of the high levels of fog there, not many people have seen it. Some believe it to be a guardian of the mountain, but others believe it to be the guardian of a gate to other dimensions. Reported to be a very tall humanoid, at least 8 feet high. It is covered in short gray hair.
No.
Second highest mountain in Scotland is Ben Nevis is the highest one. What's the Cairngorm? Oh no, the Highland Beast.
No, it's is it Ben McDewey or something? The Grey Man of Ben McDewey. How would you say that with a Scottish accent? No, the big grey man.
Ben McDewey. I don't know.
The Fear Leath Moor. The big grey man. I don't know. I don't know how to read any of these things. Okay. I have 2 more. 2 more. We're doing great. The only one we've gotten so far was Joe. A dog-like creature that gained popularity with a photo and video taken of a giant black canine or feline. It has been compared to lions, ponies, dogs, and even sheep, but no conclusive evidence has been found.
The only sort of big cat or thing that I can remember that had a name was there was a Beast of Bodmin Moor.
Oh, you're close. Joe, I think you might have mentioned this one before, actually.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of this when I was saying about the moor. But now I've forgotten what I said earlier in this podcast. What did I say?
The Beast of Dartmoor.
The Beast of Dartmoor. Is that something that was in an Arthur Conan Doyle? Or was that like a...
Sounds like the Hound of the Baskervilles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't that set on Dartmoor?
I think so.
There are a lot of dog-like cryptids, it seems.
3-headed dog beast.
Yeah. All right, I have one more. I hope one of you guys gets this.
Come on, Phillip. I'm rooting for you on this one.
All right. So named because of its apparent ability to bound effortlessly through the air, it was greatly feared by residents of suburban London during the 1830s. A diabolical supervillain of sorts, it was usually described as being tall, thin, and cloaked in a tight-fitting oilskin suit, as well as a flowing cape. It first gained notoriety when it began to accost solitary young women by ripping at their clothing with steely claws while breathing noxious blue flames into their faces.
Is it Alan Sugar?
No, I don't know if that's a joke or not, but no, that's not the answer.
I've never heard this story before.
Oh,
Never
come
heard.
on, Joe.
Well, this is quite maddening. I don't know. I'm not familiar with my cryptoids, my kryptonites, kryptonasters.
Have you ever heard of Spring-Heeled Jack?
Oh, Spring-Heeled Jack. I went to school with him.
Okay. All right, well, that was a bust.
My only saving grace is that it's not Japanese cryptoids. That would have been
Okay.
If you'd asked about kappas, you'd have been all over that.
the hibagon. Yeah, the hibagon is the Japanese Bigfoot.
Oh.
Yes, I was listening to your YouTube interview.
The only thing is he's not very big and his feet aren't very big.
Well, that's what those old women were saying. I understand now.
Sometimes we all have cultural miscommunication. We just need to get it off our chest.
Okay, Philip, as we ask all of our guests to do, hopefully you were able to think of some uncomfortable experience, perhaps amusing, that you've gone through in your many years here in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, the one I could think of is from the early days, actually, maybe around 2003. And not so much a cultural miscommunication, but when I realized something was different.
Uh-huh.
Because in the UK, if we do something embarrassing, we tend to laugh at ourselves and other people laugh at us as well to kind of share the embarrassment. I don't know if if the States is the same, but definitely in the UK, it's generally that, you do something stupid and you share the embarrassment and everybody joins it and you kind of feel better about it. And,
for about 8 to 10 years, you do that.
Yeah. as it keeps, you keep being reminded. Remember that time? And I kind of thought that, Japanese humor was kind of similar. In some areas, it still is. The manzai is kind of similar to the double acts we have. The classics like Morecambe and Wise and Vic and Bob and things like that. But anyway, what happened was I'd been shopping to the supermarket. I had a bag of shopping in each hand. So walked onto the train. It was a JR line train, super smooth floor of the carriage. And as I put my foot down, my leg went up in the air. I went backwards. I swung my arms out, trying to balance myself with the two shopping bags. I probably made a complete arse of myself. Found my foot in and went, oops, looked around, expecting to see everybody, maybe giving me a clap or a smile or laughing at me and, spreading the embarrassment. And I realized that everybody had either closed their eyes, hid behind their newspapers, or shrunk into a ball as deep down into the train carriage as they could. And I've never felt so embarrassed in my life. And I still have this image of me swinging around shopping bags and, my leg flying into the air as I try to stop myself from going on my arse in the train carriage. And that's when I realized that some things are different here.
Yeah, that's funny. That didn't end as badly as I thought it was going to, but with groceries sprawled out on the floor. But that is like I don't know if it's a Western person's instinct or not, but like when you do something embarrassing to instantly try to like laugh it off.
Yeah.
Joe, I was telling a story on an episode a couple episodes back where I was walking down the hill across the street from my house, and I slipped and fell on the leaves.
Yeah.
And there's nobody around, nobody saw me, but I got up and like laughed it off, just in case somebody was actually looking at me. Of course, it wouldn't have mattered. They would have been hiding behind their newspaper.
I do embarrassing things daily, so I've just got used to it, and I don't even try and laugh it off anymore. I own it and carry on.
Accept it.
Yeah,
you're a better man than I.
I know that something embarrassing is going to happen probably most days. So, cool.
All right. Yeah, Philip, thank you for joining us. If people want to find out more about your work, where can they do that?
There's a website, which is www.hiddenpathskyoto.com, and all the information about the books. The Paranormal Kansai is not on there yet. But
when do you think you'll finish that?
Well, the first draft is finished. One thing I had to deal with was that I had intended to have a lot more photographs in it. Mm-hmm. So basically make it a very visual book, so that each section you read, there's some image to go with it.
But every time you printed them out, they came out all scratched. So.
But because of coronavirus, I just couldn't go to a lot of places. So I've put some sketches in some, and what I'll probably end up doing is putting it out with less photographs than I'd originally intended. But all being well, maybe February, hopefully.
Oh, okay, so pretty soon.
Is this going to be available on Amazon?
Yes, yeah.
And if you need anybody to read the audiobook, I'm available to speak to my agent. That's Casey.
I'm not his agent. I do enough for him already.
I did actually put a sort of an appeal out on Twitter. If anybody in Kansai area had any paranormal stories, that I was thinking about putting a chapter in the end, but I didn't get any reply from that. So whether people haven't come across much, personal experiences.
We can do that. We can do that right now. We can certainly request people to because we have such a massive following on our Twitter account.
Oh yeah.
Oh, reaching all corners of the world. So well, if you're listening to this and you do have any paranormal stories of Kansai or indeed anywhere, please let us know. Yeah. I'd love to hear. I'm always interested. When I say that I 100% don't believe in ghosts, at the same time, my wife's away tonight, so I'll be sleeping here alone, and I will be a little bit scared after talking about this.
All right. Philip, what is your Twitter?
I believe it's P. Jackson Music.
Okay.
I believe at P. Jackson Music. I think.
That sounds right to me, but I'm also not 100% sure. But
I'll tell you, how about I check it out? It is P. Jackson Music. So there you go, at P. Jackson Music.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Philip, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you along. And
we'll be back next week.
And sleep tight tonight, everyone. Don't have nightmares.
All right, goodbye.